Hello and welcome back to another video. In this video, we will talk about the 15 things most commuters dislike about the New York City subway. Or really, 15 things that I dislike about the New York City subway, part 2. Before we begin, a disclaimer that this video is supposed to be a joke in that I like the New York City subway. But just because you like something, it doesn't mean that something is without its flaws. Without further ado, let's get into it. Number 1. The turnstiles. This is a form of delay that every New Yorker hates. Basically, you look at the countdown clock and it says train in 2 minutes, and you pull out your Metro card. I am going to swipe my card and have a good rest of the day. You swipe that card and psych, the turnstiles are like, please swipe again. You swipe a bit slower, and it is still, please swipe again. You repeat like 10 times, hear like 5 trains rumble into the station, then when you finally swiped in for the 15th time, the card reads, insufficient balance. Then you turn to the vending machine only to see a line of commuters. All we can say is, good luck getting back home. But I do want to mention that Omni is an alternative and that the turnstiles will be phased out sometime soon. Credit where it's due. Number 2. When the train arrives early and you miss that train. This is a separate problem than when the train arrives late. This is when you expect every day that the train will arrive at that time, only for it to arrive early and you miss that train. Like, come on. The departure board said that this train will leave at 8 a.m. But the train is like, yeah, let's leave 5 minutes early and screw over the many commuters that depend on this train. The most egregious example is the G because more often than not, the G will leave early, leaving many commuters waiting 10 minutes or more for the next one. Number 3. When the MTA countdown clocks lie. So one time I missed the train and the countdown clock said the next train will arrive in 3 minutes. I did not think much of it because, it isn't 3 minutes, which is reasonable. Then 3 minutes turned into 5, then into 8 minutes, then into 10 minutes, and that train still did not arrive. Finally, after 12 minutes of waiting, the train finally arrived. He had one job, countdown clocks, which is to accurately tell me when the next train is coming, and you failed. Congratulations, now you can work for the New York City bureaucracy. Number 4. Narrow staircases. This is not a feature in newer stations, but on dual contract stations, the staircases are so narrow. This means that whenever a train comes and dumps a lot of passengers onto the station, prepare for the station to be clogged. You will probably be on the platform shuffling ever so closer to stairwells for like 5 minutes. With the MTA wanting to rehabilitate stations on the Flushing line, they should probably make the staircases wider. Number 5. East Side Access. Okay, first of all, we like the East Side Access as it brings redundancy to the system while giving commuters more options with better service. But that has come at a very steep cost. Firstly, in an excellent video by Action Kid, he showed that you're only saving a good 3 to 7 minutes on the East Side Access, a far cry from the 40 minutes that the MTA touted. Next, the East Side Access came at a large cost. $11 billion, which is extremely hard to stomach even when New York City has some of the largest subway costs. Finally, making the LIRR Atlantic branch a shuttle that runs every 8 minutes is not a good idea, as that is an up and over transfer. With the removal of time transfers at Jamaica, this means that commuters might be missing their trains, causing commuters to add 8 or more minutes to their commutes. Is the East Side Access a good idea? Yes. But does it have a lot of issues worth talking about? Definitely a yes. Number 6. The R train. What is wrong with the R train? Everything. It runs every 8 minutes, has a circuitous route, and should definitely be improved. On weekends, the R train runs every 15 minutes and is very prone to service changes. So please, avoid the R on the weekends. Number 7. The M train being an incomplete loop. Okay, ever since I looked at the subway map, one thing that has angered me is that the M train is an incomplete loop. Like, I can walk faster between Forest Hills and Middle Village than the M train. I much rather want to connect the two terminals so that it looks better and gives Brooklyn and Queens another option other than the G. But with the IBX coming, this problem will be partially solved. Number 8. Transfers at Times Square. You know how complicated Times Square is when it gets its own video. This complex is so massive and is very disorienting for the average tourist. With signs everywhere, it is very easy to get lost. I remember one time that it took me 10 minutes to walk from the IND 8th Avenue line to the BMT Broadway line because the distance is just so long and half the time I thought I was walking around in circles. That is not a transfer, that is a hike. To add to the chaos, Times Square is now merged with Bryant Park to form one colossal megastation. Yay? Number 9. Minimal time savings on the Express. So we all think that the Express is some fast train that will radically speed up commute times, right? Well, that cannot be further from the truth, because even the best time savers, the Flushing Express, will only save you 10 minutes from Flushing to Queensboro Plaza. The Lexington Avenue Express will only save you around 10 to 12 minutes from 125th Street to Brooklyn Bridge. That is actually decent, but the best being decent is not good. On the other hand, we got the Central Park West Express, only saving you a grand total of 3 minutes. Like, you would expect a line designed for speed to save you more time, but that is just terrible. Number 10. How slow the Manhattan Bridge is. Speaking of speeds, let's talk about the Manhattan Bridge. It is pretty scenic, but trains are so slow. Like, they take 10 minutes to go from DeKalb to Canal or Grand. This is because trains have to take their time on the bridge because the bridge contains some insane downgrades. And if the conductors are not careful, then the train is toast. This does beg the question, is the bridge antiquated? Number 11. Myrtle Junction. We got another at-grade junction again that eats up capacity. The M crosses in front of the J and Z trains to access the BMT Myrtle Avenue line. This happens more often than not, as every time the J arrives at Myrtle Avenue, an M train is already in the station, and it becomes a game of mini mo, and whichever train gets delayed would get delayed for a very long time. The only way to save this junction is to grade separate the junction, and the MTA could have gotten it right when they rebuilt the junction in 2017. But since they are the MTA, they kept the overall terrible design in place. What wasted potential? Number 12. Train bunching. So you would think that it is only the buses that bunch, but the subway surprisingly bunches a lot too. What I mean by bunching is that the countdown clock would read something like, next train is in 15 minutes, then in 16 minutes. Like, who's directing this train schedules? I would have a lot more respect if the train was in 8 minutes than in 16 minutes, as it is more even. But 15 minutes than 16? Yeah, the subway is like trolling us at this point. Number 13. Closed stations. Since the subways were built in the early 20th century, dumb stop spacing was a feature of the subway. 14th to 18th to 23rd to 28th to 34th is a common example. Beverly Road to Cortelyou Road is another example. Whenever a train makes those stops, the back of the train probably doesn't even leave the station before they announce that the next stop is 18th Street. What is even more infuriating is that I can't bring myself to close these stations, because these stations are heavily used and you are making affected passengers walk an extra 4 to 5 blocks to get to where they're going. So 18th Street is probably a stop I keep, believe it or not. Number 14. No 10th Avenue infill station. This station should have opened along with Hudson Yards, but because of money and bureaucracy, this station was axed from the plans. Of course, an infill station at 10th Avenue is part of our 7 train project, but cutting 10th Avenue is a foolish idea, considering that 10th and 41st is a dense area and deserves a station. But because of politics, commuters now have to go to Times Square. You know, the station that is never crowded and never convoluted to walk around. Number 15. Skip stop. Skip stop is a terrible idea and proves that New York City is incapable of long-term planning. Now, if you don't know what it is, basically think of every other station being called A. Now, for the stations in between the A stations, we will call them B. Some heavily used stations will be called AB. Now, imagine a train making all A stops, and the next train making all B stops, and both A and B trains making AB stops. That is where the trouble lies. Whenever skip stop is introduced, you're cutting capacity to A and B stops by half. 5-minute intervals, which are halfway acceptable, become 10-minute intervals. What is more infuriating is that skip stop barely saves you time. With skip stop, the J takes 49 minutes, and without skip stop, the J takes 54 minutes. That is only 5 minutes saved, considering that you are starting at Stutphin Boulevard. And while saving 5 measly minutes, you lengthened everyone's waiting times for 5 minutes. That is some sick profit right there. Hey, MTA, install a third track between 121st and Broadway Junction, and install a peak direction express service. This is how you can save 12 minutes, an amazing alternative to get to the financial district than the E. Or just cut skip stop entirely, embrace stop consolidation, and there, you doubled everyone's frequencies while saving more time. So that is it for 15 things most commuters dislike about the New York City subway system. What are your thoughts on our selections? Let us know in the comments below. And have a good day.